see things in a lot more global way. You know, if people are really upset and they can't communicate, you know, communication training is not what I'm trained to do as an attorney, but I understand, you know, in terms of the legal process, how important it is. So to be able to do this value add service that people aren't going to get elsewhere is really important. You know, when we have an accountant or a certified divorce financial planner, that's not technically what a lawyer would be doing in a case, but if I can help people understand, okay, if it's not just getting 50-50, it's getting the best 50% for me, given what my risk tolerance is and what my long-term plans are. You know, these people can do projections for the clients of, okay, if you do this asset mix, here's what it looks like in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. Is that what you had in mind? I mean, it really can be a lot more valuable for clients. The business issue we've run into, though, is that we do such a good job helping people with this stuff, is that they don't come back. I mean, one of the issues with litigation is you get some recidivism because you get the winners and the losers who are just gunning for the other person, for the seesaw to switch so that they can go back to court. We've been trying everything because it's much easier to market to clients you've already got, you know, to try to find other services. The one thing that we found that's gotten a little bit of a toehold is prenups, because people get remarried and they understand what they've been through in terms of a divorce. So.
I was just going to ask, can you describe a little bit the type of background? You said that there was more experience mediators, but can you describe a little bit what kind of background people have to come into mediation, like people that work for you, the lawyer side of mediation?
Most of the lawyers have done family law litigation, at least for a couple of years, because I think clients really value knowing what the lay of the land is. You know, that you're able to say, well, you know, I did a case once that did X, Y, Z. That's not technically required, but I do think that a certain amount of seasoning is good. The mediator demographic tends to skew a little bit older. I think a lot of you are in the first wave of, you might have been peer mediators at school. You know, when I went to law school here, the closest thing to mediation classes was evidence. You know, it was like completely non-existent. And so people who've been sort of steeped in that, and that it's been part of your education as you've matured, I think that the idea of, well, you have to be a retired judge in order to be a mediator is changing. Frankly, I don't think that retired judges have all the great of settlement skills, a lot of them, because, you know, they're used to the gavel and they have a lot of influence in the robe and the whole thing. Some of them are terrific, but I think some of it is a little overplayed unless that's the style you're looking for. But yeah, a little bit of seasoning, and it doesn't have to be, you know, I was, I think, 12 years. You don't have to do 12 years in order to, but it does help to know what the deal is. And it's, you know, family law per se is not that complicated. It's that you need to have this breadth of knowledge of a lot of other kinds of things. You know, we had an issue where people are now starting to own houses together. Before, they would refinance or they would sell, but there's like 20 issues, sub-issues you need to talk about when people are going to own a house together. You know, what if I want to paint it chartreuse, right? What if I don't keep it up the way you want, but you're the co-owner, but I live there, and now the water heater went. I mean, who pays for that? Who makes these decisions? There's a bunch of stuff that if you're newly minted that you don't necessarily see, although, you know, that's just part of being a new lawyer too, is you basically make a lot of mistakes and get your, you know what, handed to you. And those are the lessons that you never forget, like when I screwed up my boss's cousin's case, you know, I won't make that mistake again. But, you know, as the supervisor, you try to keep people out of as much of that kind of trouble as you can, but it's inevitable.
Yeah, sort of a kind of basic mediation. How do you deal with third parties that just, like, a party wants to go to mediation and then they insist on having a third party there? All the third party ever does is sabotage their assignments.
You know, we've actually had the opposite experience, is that often the third party is helpful because they're probably tired of hearing it or they're tired of paying for it. We had one situation, and it's interesting because people won't tell you that they're bringing these people, even though we tell them that you should tell us so that we at least have enough chairs. And this woman brought her dad. And the husband was like, at first he was really incensed, and then he's like, well, you know what? You know, Dad has always been pretty level-headed about this, and I really feel like he isn't going to be stacked against me. So yeah, if he wants to sit in, that's fine. But we'll start the mediation with the parties themselves and ask them what they want to do about these extraneous people who perhaps been brought at the last minute. If we really ended up with somebody who was trying to sabotage, I probably would talk to that person in caucus and ask kind of what's in it for you? How does this help you? You know, because it gets costly, it's upsetting, you know, but oftentimes it's the spoilers are more likely to not be in the room because they don't want to come. You know, you get the daddy warbucks who's paying the bill because I never liked my son-in-law anyway, you know, and they want to fan the flames. Those are often people who can do a better job fanning the flames if they don't come. So I think when you get the people who do come, generally they're more helpful, not less helpful.
Do you ever feel like one spouse and might need someone to advocate for him and her, or you feel that maybe, okay, or have you ever felt that you need to tell them mediation might not work here because this person really isn't getting justice, I guess, this lawyer, or how do you handle that?
You know, it's pretty interesting. A lot of times those people who are really sort of downtrodden and can't stand up for themselves either will voluntarily bring a lawyer because they understand that they are, or they just won't self-select into the process. But it's very interesting because a lot of questions are kind of along these lines, but also like, what if people try to give up too much and you know that what they're doing is not fair? It's this, the mediation room is its own teeny weeny free market economy. It's very interesting. We just don't see people giving up too much. Sometimes they'll do it out of guilt or something in the first session, but then you write it all up in the summary letter and you're explaining, you know, you've done something a little unconventional by, you know, waiving $1 million in assets and this sort of thing. And by the time their friends and relatives get a hold of them, they're a very different person in the second session. So it's interesting how water kind of seeks its own level with that stuff.
One more question, Ellie.
Did you always know you wanted to go to family law, or was it something just
No, it was thanks to Shaft, Enema, and Grief. I was actually in estate planning law, but they did, at this other firm, they needed a family lawyer, so I'm like, oh yeah, I do family law. And it turned out to be a great fit, so that was perfect, because the sitting around and doing estate plans was like really kind of a dirge. It was not for me at all, so.
How did you get to California? You said you kind of co-founded it, but how did you know to go to California to start?
You know, I'd like to tell you that it's because California really is the epicenter of most mediation, that and like Madison, Wisconsin, and that I was drawn like Mecca. But I married a guy in the entertainment industry, and he's a puppeteer. And so if I'd insisted that he moved to Connecticut, he'd be doing birthday parties. But yeah, so like the severed limb that walks off, you know, in the horror movie, that's a puppet generally. And he was in Men in Black 1 and 2, and you know, some other stuff, and so it's a little higher end work. But an interesting thing is, I thought, you know, when I moved to California, here's my chance to do something different. I always wanted to be a talent agent. I'm going to go work as an agent's assistant, right? Which is how you sort of earn your chops and make your way up. And after about a month, I realized that the unemployed actors who were the agency's clients, who called all day long every day nervous, acted exactly like divorce clients. You know, because all they're doing is sitting around worrying about their divorce, and all the actors were doing was sitting around worrying about not getting a part or not getting another role. And I'm like, wow, this really is not that different than being a divorce lawyer. You know, maybe I could just retool what my skills already are and do something different. So.
And it's absolutely delightful to